Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst for 7th August 2024, where we will be discussing 9 important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express for your UPSC CSE examinations. The very first article is regarding a recent editorial in the Hindu regarding the strategies to power Indian economy to $30 trillion. In the next article, we will be discussing regarding the Draft Broadcast Services Regulation Bill 2024. In the third article, we'll be looking into the recent Supreme Court review of the PMLA case, and this is regarding the 2022 PMLA judgment. In the next article, we'll be looking into the various antitrust allegations of the big tech companies of the world. And in the fifth article, we'll be looking into the Indian aviation sector and the recent issue regarding the same. And finally, we'll be concluding the session with 4 more important prelims information known as Prelims Snippets, where we'll be providing news in shorts for the prelims examination. So stay tuned. Hello students, I hope you all are doing fine. So with this, let us start with the very first article. We'll be discussing a very wonderful piece of editorial in the first article with reference to how to actually power Indian economy to the goal of $30 trillion. That means we have to make our GDP size $30 trillion, and preferably that should be coming within 2040-50 framework. And that is where we must be understanding the context of this article is that India is aiming for rapid economic growth as of now using various liberal policies that tap the private sector. And it should not be affected by the criticism that Indian government always faces with reference to the debates on increasing trends of inequality in the society or in the economy. And these are the various facts and figures and the theories which we'll be discussing in this article. And please let me tell you, all of you, since mains is approaching soon, right? All of you, please do note down the important theories, important data, important strategies, important mission statements by the government of India, which can help you get that 1 or 2 extra marks in your mains answers. And those of you who are not appearing for mains this year, do definitely make it a point to update your notes according to the value additions which we'll be giving you throughout the Analyst. And this is when we are talking about the syllabus, a very important part of your prelims, when we talk about economic and social development and with reference to GS3, where there have been many questions in the PYQs reflecting around the state of nature of the Indian economy, be it the recent trends of external sector, inflation, potential GDP, the amount of GVA with reference to the changed method in 2015. So it has been a consistent trend that in the mains PYQs that there are questions on macroeconomic data, macroeconomic condition of the Indian economy. And this is where let us start the discussion with. We'll be talking about economic growth and poverty alleviation in the nation. When we talk about our policy agenda with reference to Indian economic development, we often hear a term known as Vikshit Bharat, right? And India being in its Amrit Kal, right? So this is where we have to use such policy statements, policy words when we try to enhance our answers. And we also know that India wants to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047, when India will be achieving its 100th year of independence. And this is actually when India will also try to become a developed nation. And hence, India is trying to achieve its $30 trillion economic status by 2047. So this is where we have to understand the broader scenario of the discussion would be. Firstly, we'll be focusing on economic growth and poverty alleviation. When we compare the pre-1991 economy, Indian economy, and the post-1991 Indian economy, there are various differences that we have to notice. Firstly, when we understand from 1947 to 1991, there have been many economic policies which the government of India has actually focused on the vulnerable sections of the population, be it the Garibi Hatao campaign during the Indira Gandhi government time, or be it the various pro-business reforms taken by Rajiv Gandhi during the 1980s, and also the various interventions with reference to setting up of, say, various government banks in the rural areas, that is starting the age of financial inclusion during this phase only, right? Be it the inclusion of the various farmers in the most successful revolution of the country, that is known as Green Revolution, or be it the White Revolution with reference to milk, production of milk, right? So this is where we have to understand the government of India during this phase has actually taken many initiatives. Along with the same, the Planning Commission via its various 5-year plans actually have focused on various rapid inclusive growth and the various amounts of financial inclusion and the various amounts of welfare governmental schemes, be it the construction of roadways, be it the construction of rural roads under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. There have been many initiatives to actually lift people out of the poverty basket, out of the poverty line. So this is where we have to understand that the poverty rate still was around at 50% during this particular phase, despite so many governmental aspirations. Now, this is actually a time when the economy was leaning on the socialist economic principles, where the government hand was more in the market than the private sector. After 1991, we know that the LPG reforms were ushered in, where the pro-market reforms were taken place. And in this particular types of reforms, the market, or say the private sector, were given more legroom to actually set up more and more, say, enterprises, expand their businesses without any government licensing, but with respect to some exceptions in various of the important hazardous sectors. Apart from that, the licensing Raj, the various inspection Raj, the restrictions on import and export of various goods and services, they were all lifted. And India actually became more closer and integrated to the rest of the world, and also achieved the status of market economy, along with obviously some characteristics of socialistic principles also, where the government actually adopted a mixed economy model, where both the government sector and the private sector coexisted in actually ushering the vibrant future of India's economic growth, right? And during this phase, we understand that the poverty dropped to 20% less, approximate 20% by 2011, and also according to Niti Aayog's multi-dimensional poverty index, right, we have actually reduced the multidimensional poverty to around less than 15% in India as of 2022-2023 data, right? So this is where also we have to understand we have actually lifted a lot of people out of the poverty, right? And also during the same time, we understand after the 1991 liberalization, privatization, globalization reforms, the Indian economy opened up. There was a particular sector in the country known as the service sector. We all know that, right? Service sector actually leapfrogged by more than 10-20% when we talk about the contribution of service sector in the Indian GDP. And we also see the growth of IT sector, the growth of business processing outsourcing, and the various amounts of service sector verticals within the same. And this has actually led to bludgeoning or increasing amount of profitability within the service sector at the expense of the cost of the industrial and the agricultural sector, which actually remains stagnant. Particularly when we talk about the agricultural sector, we know that majority of the Indians are actually employed in the agricultural sector. And also the amount of employment in the industrial sector, this is also a very, very significant portion, where many towns and cities in India actually thrive on industries. Apart from the urban areas, urban India, which actually also thrive on the service sector. We have to understand that over this period of time, right, there was also an increasing trend of inequality in the country. Now, this inequality trend is actually reflected by this data which I have given you, provided by the World Inequality Database, which actually have compared the 1961 levels to 2021 levels of inequality in the country, where we have understood that the wealth concentration in India, with reference to the top 10% of the people, top 1% of the people, as we have seen here, it has increased significantly, particularly after the 1991 reforms. How this is the case? Because we know that the service sector witnessed a heavy amount of growth. Some few selected manufacturing sector with FDI coming in, they also become prosperous. I mean, the enterprises become prosperous. And also we have seen over a period of time from 2011, also 2021, even right now, the inequality in the country pertaining to both wealth inequality, where by wealth we mean tangible wealth, intangible wealth, such as investments in land, gold, cash, and so on, various other things. And also with reference to income inequality, where we talk obviously about the annual income, the monthly per capita income of the people. So both of them have accrued mostly to the top 1 and the top 10% of the people here. So this is where we see, along with economic growth right now, what we are seeing with reference to GDP growth, increasing GDP growth of the country, we're also seeing the increasing amount of inequality in the nation. And this is nothing abnormal according to the authors, because this is actually justified via this Kuznets curve. Now, this mention of Kuznets curve is not actually in the editorial. This is actually where we actually want to give you some more important points in your mains answers. We know that Kuznets curve is actually the relationship, the inverted U relationship between income inequality represented by Gini coefficient, which actually measures the amount of inequality, right, in the society and in the economy. And on the x-axis we have the economic growth. We know that whenever the economic growth is actually lower in any society, right, that particular society itself, or say that particular country itself, a poor economy. So obviously the majority of the people in that particular economy will be poor, and hence the inequality will also be lower. As and when the economy starts to expand, there will be more people who are actually having more and more wealth concentration and economic income concentration. So gradually, when we understand, when the economic growth increases, the inequality also increases. So this is the direct correlation up to a point when, up to a turning point when, after this point, when the economic growth of that particular country increases, the inequality reduces. Why? Because just like the first phase here, right, in this particular phase of declining inequality, we will be understanding that most of the people, for example, in the developed nation, in the richer nations, right, where most of the people are actually having equal amount of distribution of wealth. So this is where we have to understand the Kuznets curve with reference to the increasing amount of inequality, particularly with reference to some nations which are having high economic growth, and India is possibly somewhere within this phase, that where economic growth is also high, inequality is also high, and obviously that is bound to go down in a particular period of time. And here we have to understand some of the potential of Indian economies, workforce economics, so various amount of sectors that the author of the editorial has presented. And here we have to understand these are not challenges. So these are actually the potential where we have to look at. We have to actually reorient our way of understanding by actually seeing at this kind of, say, important data. Firstly, if we look at the labor force distribution, agriculture is actually contributing 46% of the Indian labor force, but contributing only 18% of the GDP, right? These are all Government of India data, right? And we understand such a huge number of people contributing to only 18% of the GDP. So we understand that there is low productivity in the Indian agriculture sector, and also there is underemployment, whereby a lot of people are actually doing wasteful jobs in the particular sector. So maybe we can accommodate a lot of people who are overemployed or say underemployed in the agricultural sector into manufacturing and the services sector. Also, as we can see from the data here, the services sector is contributing to a far lesser amount of labor force, but contributing to major amount of economic value addition, right? When we talk about the female labor force participation rate, this is only at 37%, where most of our girls, most of our women, they are not participating in the economic sector. This is actually very lower than China, Vietnam and Japan, who have the rates higher at 60-70%, right? Also, as we can see, increasingly right now, according to the recent PLFS survey, right, we find that there is an increasing amount of a trend of female labor force participation rate in the recent times. So this is where we have to understand, we have to use this data in our answers. When we talk about the manufacturing sector and the export sector, India is actually dependent on labor intensive manufacturing, which means that most of the manufacturing activity in the country is actually focusing on low skilled and employment or labor intensive manufacturing, right, where we have a high amount of MSMEs dominating the entire industrial and the service sectors. And MSMEs, we know these are small size and small scale enterprises which actually focus on a local production of goods and services. Some of the MSMEs are actually quite successful, but most of the MSMEs are actually belonging to the micro and small classification, where their size, the turnover is actually very less, right? And also In India, we have to understand that we must be actually, when we are having this amount of excess capacity from the agricultural sector, and also high amount of low skilled workers, employment intensive industries, this will actually give us impetus to focus on export intensive sector. Particularly when we look at a particular case study right now, there are conflicts going on in Bangladesh and also in the rest of the Asian nations. So this is where India must be trying to diversify the various amounts of say textile sectors, right, within the nation. So we can actually focus more on exports. The surplus labor must be also be used in low-end manufacturing sectors, and there must be more and more emphasis on the government side on this particular one. And there is another theory that the authors have given, which actually is known as the middle income trap, which actually is kind of a challenge for India, because we understand that whenever India is actually progressing from a developing nation to developed nations, there will be many challenges. This is reflected by this middle income trap theory. Now, this theory is telling that as and when the countries try to becoming more and more developed and having high amount of economic growth, it becomes increasingly difficult to become a developed nation. Why? Because if we take on x-axis the amount of time, and on y-axis we have income, right? And we take the case of low income nations, where they have, for example, just achieved independence, or just achieved, say, open economic status, or they have just started some economic reforms at the beginning of the time in this particular axis. They will be having low amount of income because they are actually yet to have some successful reforms, right? So these countries, for example, countries like most of the African nations, right, some of the, say, island nations, they actually have low levels of economic resources and so on. So that is why they are actually having low income status, and this is where these countries can remain in a particular low income trap if they do not carry on the economic reforms over a period of time. Now, for example, they actually carried out reforms, and for example, countries like China, Malaysia, India, Brazil, who actually belong in this particular category, right, they actually fall in the middle income countries, and this can be also a trap, because this is the particular criteria in this particular graph where it becomes increasingly difficult for the countries to progress to, for example, staying rich countries, or say middle income to high income nations, because there are a lot of things that we have to take care of. We have to take care of the market forces, we have to take care of the labor reforms, we have to take care of the industrial process, we have to take care of the FDI reforms and so on, and we have to have a whole of government approach for everything to come together and to become a successful reform agenda, right? And this is where we have to understand that India is actually right now in this particular aspect, right? And also when we look at historical data, out of 101 middle income nations in 1960, right, only 23 have achieved high income status as of now. So this is according to the study, to the economic study, right? So this is where we have to understand India is also right now in this middle income category. So India cannot afford to be left out when we talk about the economic growth going forward. So India must be avoiding this middle income trap and be adopting some important crucial strategies. Now, the road to a $30 trillion economy is actually proposed by the Niti Aayog, right? Where we have to understand at 2047 levels, right? We have to have around 29 or $30 trillion of economic size. We have to grow our per capita income to around $17.5 thousand per annum. Our exports must also be increasing drastically, along with our imports must be diversifying to various nations to actually reduce the amount of geopolitical risks. Our investments and our savings must also be increasing by quantum levels. So this is where there should be multiple strategies. Firstly, we must be focusing on the private sector and transforming them into the engine of growth, because gone are the times of pre-1990s where the government was actually dominant in various of the sectors of the Indian economy. But right now, engine of the growth must be led by the private sectors, where more and more startups also and MSMEs, particularly led by women, they must be catered forward. And that is why in this respect, we have many schemes and initiatives for them. For example, Startup India Mission, the Credit Guarantee Scheme, Stand Up India for Women, SC, ST and tribal sections, right? We must be also trying to leverage our demographic dividend, because according to the economic survey, India will be reaching its peak demographic dividends in the 2040s. And this is the decade of India's final decade of India's Amrit Kal. So definitely right now, we must be having more and more emphasis on the skilling aspirations on the various amounts of policies with reference to labor. Next, India must be promoting manufacturing, and this is where the PLI scheme, the Make in India objectives, the amount of say various FDI, liberalization FDI policies, various other sectors, is actually one of the strategies that India is actually following right now. India must be also trying to enhance its female labor force participation rate by actually bringing in revolution in agriculture, where we know that right now Indian agriculture is going through a phase known as feminization of Indian agriculture, where more number of women is actually present in the agricultural fields rather than men. So this is where we have to start our women-centric reforms from the agricultural sector, where we must be giving more and more funds, more and more priority sector lending to women entrepreneurs, promoting more and more self-help groups, farmer-producer organizations, and also most importantly, political representation, where we also have the Nari Shakti Bill. Now in the comment section, you let me know when the Nari Shakti Bill will be effective in India, right? In the comment section, you let me know. In the next one, India is also trying to focus on export-oriented growth by actually promoting PLI scheme, and actually is trying to be dependent on the domestic production of the country and also export the surplus to the rest of the world by also liberalizing a lot of reforms in the particular export sector. India must also, when it try to achieve developed economic status, must be also trying to avoid protectionism, or this is actually meaning avoiding import tariffs to maintain competitiveness, because we cannot protect our manufacturing if we do not compete with others, right? We cannot say have some various import restrictions on various goods and services from the other nations to actually deliberately protect our domestic producers, because if we try to protect them over a big over a long period of time, then they will be not able to learn the best practices from abroad. So this is where protectionism mindset should also be shunned. Then we must be addressing the middle income trap, where there must be rapid economic focus, rapid economic funding properly to actually reduce the amount of structural issues. Structural issues are regarding the lack of infrastructure, lack of regulatory authorities, and increasing high amount of red tapeism with reference to Indian bureaucracy. So these are the various middle income trap and the various reforms we have to undertake. Then we must be trying to build industrial clusters with necessary infrastructure, particularly by attracting more and more investments. Then we must be trying to obviously increase the ease of doing business. And finally, the government of India must not be bothered too much about the inequality debates in the country, because along with economic growth, we know inequality rises. But after the turning point, remember, the inequality actually goes down along with high economic growth, right? So this is where India must be focusing on. And also in the 2023-24 budget, the finance minister actually gave us Saptarishi. Saptarishi is actually the 7 priorities of inclusive growth, reaching the last mile, infrastructure investment, unleashing the potential, green growth, youth power and financial sector. Please remember this Saptarishi to actually quote, just like the way we quote sustainable development goals in the conclusion of our answers, right? And here I have one practice question for you all. You let me know the approach which would be followed by you while addressing this question. This question is: by adopting forward-linking and ambitious policies, India can pave the way towards becoming a $30 trillion economy by 2047. Comment. In the comment section, you let me know how you should approach this. And here, let me give you some important statements from the Prime Minister from the year of 2022, where the principles that India should be following is a whole of government approach and whole of country approach if it is trying to achieve this large target, right? And also, the focus should be on development of new agriculture, because we know most of the labor force is there, right? Future ready cities, and also create an ecosystem to facilitate Indian global champions, and also tapping into India's soft power abroad to increase investments abroad, right? And in the comment section again, you let me know 2-3 areas where India can actually tap its soft powers in various nations to facilitate India's economic interest. Also, we know the 9 priorities in the union budget, and also India's priorities with reference to women, farmers, poor and the youth, where the finance minister has called them the 4 new castes of India who actually need the huge amount of economic growth. So with this content, I hope you can address this question with high amount of comfortability. In the next article, we'll be looking into the Draft Broadcasting Services Regulation Bill 2024, where according to various experts, the latest draft is raising some questions. This is very important from your Indian polity governance perspective, prelims, and from GS2 government policies and interventions, and also the various issues arising out of the design and implementation. When we have to start the discussion, we have to start with the very basics of broadcasting sector in the country. Now, this is according to the PRS website. In this particular website, we have actually gone on through the various details of this particular bill, where I will be trying to explain you various aspects. At the very beginning, I want to tell you the importance of this kind of websites, because they will be giving you first-hand aspects, discussions on any new bills, and also detailed analysis of the bills. So please do go on to the website, right? And here, when we talk about the various broadcasting services, we have television, we have OTT services with digital news content, and we have radio, we have carriage of broadcasting content, particularly via 2G, 4G and 5G networks over telecom. And we also have various uplinking and downlinking content for television, right? For various live matches and so on. And here, the television content network is actually governed by the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act of 1995. The OTT is actually been governed by the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code and Rules of 2021, where actually the High Courts of Bombay, Kerala and Madras have suspended various parts of the same to actually being violative of the freedom of speech, which is a very important fundamental right of our constitution. The radio content is actually having various amount of permission agreements with radio stations in the nation, right? With reference to the various telecom operations, we have the TRI, where the various tariff orders, interconnection regulations, quality of service regulations are there to actually regulate the telecom sector. And finally, we also have the various Ministry of Information Broadcasting guidelines on the uplinking and downlinking of television content. So this is the broader framework. Along with the same, we also have the Prasar Bharati Broadcasting Corporation of India Act, the 1990 Act, right? We also have the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, the TRI Act, with reference to the various regulatory aspects. So these are the various things you need to know for actually introducing your answers in the introduction or for various prelim-centric information. Now, when we talk about the recent draft bill 2024 relating to broadcast servicing, firstly, according to the provisions, the registration of broadcasting services, be it cable, be it satellite, be it OTT, they have been actually made more and more comprehensive and mandatory with reference to the different services in line with the need of the time, right? Then the regulation of the news and the current affairs programs is actually defined by newly received or noteworthy programs, be it on YouTube, Instagram, be it on various channels, even the thing that you are watching right now, right? So these are actually everything which will be covered by the Broadcasting Services Regulation Bill of 2024, right? And there will be proper amount of prescription of program code and advertisement code whenever this kind of programs will be there, because in YouTube, on particular channels on the internet, we have various amount of this video content which is actually trying to empower you with information, right? So this is where the regulations must be brought in to actually curb malinformation, misinformation, fake news on various amount of channels. The content evaluation will be looked into an internal content evaluation committee of the various broadcasters and the service network providers with reference to the broadcasters, right? There would be some non-platform service providers who will be not bound by this content evaluation, because these particular non-platform services, they do not accept any fee or any membership. Now, any platform service, which are actually those entities which actually take some fee or membership from their members, they would be subjected to some internal content evaluation committee, where there should be some members also from women, child welfare and scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, right? And here the self-regulation aspect will also be brought in, where there will be 3 tiers: first, second and third. The first tier will be by the broadcasters themselves, where they will be have to keeping a redressal officer to look into the various complaints arising from the various members, various citizens, and also from the law enforcement authorities. There will be the second tier, where there will be self-regulatory organizations. These SROs will be set up by actually the network of various broadcast providers, where they will be looking into the self-regulatory aspects, right? And then finally, the Broadcast Advisory Council also will be set up under this particular act or bill, right? Where this will be the third tier of the self-regulation, where the government of India, where the Broadcast Advisory Council under the government of India will be advising the government of India with reference to the various penal provisions, with reference to the various amounts of recommendations that should be taken with reference to broadcasting sector in the country, right? And there would be also some offenses and fines and penalties for those entities who are operating without registration, and also for other offenses for registered broadcasting entities. And here, when we try to discuss the various amount of issues and the debate aspect of the same, firstly, we have to understand that the Code of Ethics of 2021, right, the IT rules 2021, they have been actually called into question by Bombay, Madras High Courts, particularly because the particular judges thought that the provisions with reference to OTT platforms, the digital news platform particularly, that they have to self-classify content into various categories based on age. They have to actually have age verification measures, and also they are living everything, the particular government of India via this IT rules in IT rules 2021. They're actually living everything to that OTT platform themselves, to the digital news platform themselves, right? Where they have to set up self-regulatory bodies. So these kind of provisions, they actually hint that these particular institutions, they have to abide by some non-written rules and policies, where these non-written rules and policies are actually very broadly written in the IT rules 2021, which can be easily be misinterpreted and having, say, various amount of legal loopholes to have a chilling effect on free speech, which is a fundamental right of the Indian Constitution. So this is where we have to understand when the self-regulatory bodies are also in this particular bill, and also there have been various amount of registration measures and the various amount of guidelines, rules and policies by this particular act. So this is also having that particular aspect. Next, the Program and Advertisement Code is actually hinting to some amount of editorial freedom, particularly with reference to some media houses, right? Particularly if they have to abide by some program and advertisement codes, this can be easily be misused by the various, say, regulatory bodies and the government, and the particular central government, according to some experts. Next, also the challenges for independent content creators on YouTube, on Instagram, they have to actually right now go through various administrative burden of registering their firm, registering their channel, and also they have to have some compliance cost of, for example, if the channel is quite big, they have to have a grievance redressal officer. This will be increasing the cost and hurting their own independent creative freedom at some point of time. Also, there is no mechanism to appeal against the central government, because after the third stage of BAC, right, Broadcast Advisory Council, right, the government BAC can only recommend the government of India, and the final decision would be actually be taken by the government of India. So there is actually no scope of appeal with reference to any complaint, with reference to any disputes, or say adverse kind of issue taken up by the government of India, right? And finally, this particular bill is also reintroducing the various criminal penalties which were recently decriminalized. And now in the comment section, can you tell me one important legislation of India which was drastically changed and given a new name effective from 1st July? Right? Let me give you a hint. The short form is BNS, right? One of the short form. You let me know in the comments. Now, what we should have to do forward, right? Firstly, according to Press Club India, they tweeted, right, the press bodies across the world passed a resolution against the proposed laws that meant to silence the press according to them. So as you can see here, there have been many concerns as to which the government can actually use this to subvert the editorial and media freedom. So firstly, we must be focusing on the issues. Whatever issues we discussed here, obviously these are the solutions and the way forward. Government must be resolving all of the disputes here. Next, they must be having consultations with the public, right? And the experts must be sought in, experts' opinion must be sought in, particularly by parliamentary committee referrals. In the parliament, the parliamentary committees must be properly debating and discussing on this particular aspect. Next, on focus on smaller content creators and startups cannot be ignored, because there are actually many content creators who generate a lot of employment. They also generate a lot of effective, say, news and current affairs to the rest of the people. There are also a lot of startups, media startups, right, which we knew. You can also give me 2-3 examples of some good production houses which actually started their life, their stage and career on YouTube, right, and various basic other channels. So these are actually having a greater amount of economic potential by generating more and more employment and so on. But these rules and regulations can restrict them. And there must be moderate penalties. There have been penalties worth even going up to the tune of 50 lakhs for some registered business houses, registered broadcasting houses. So penalties can be actually be brought down or say liberalized after discussion with the broadcasting authorities and the bodies here. Then we must be understanding creative freedom is actually an indicator of the progress of, say, the cultural progress of a society. So there must be more and more promotion of the creative freedom in this particular aspect, right? So these rules and regulations must also be factored with reference to this amount of creative freedom, where there have been allegations with reference to the IT rules, right? There have been various self-censorship where the OTT platforms or the various content creators, they themselves do not try to express their creative freedom with reference to, or say with regard to various harsh penalties from the government authorities. And finally, the government must also be advocating for algorithmic transparency, where the particular algorithms of social media channels, websites must be streamlined and made more transparent to actually cater to a peaceful society, because there have been lots of allegations of fake news, misinformation disseminated, which later resulted in riots. And it has been seen that the social media channels, it has been also reported by various ex-employees of those companies, right, where there have been many allegations that these companies deliberately promote hate content to actually increase the engagement on their particular website. So this also must be addressed with reference to boosting algorithmic transparency. And finally, again, I have a practice question for you all. You can try to write the loose answer in the comment section. Highlight the provisions and the issues with the Broadcasting Services Bill 2024, right? A very basic question, and we can also expect this question in the mains, particularly since this is in the news right now. Anything that is going on in the Parliament of India right now, that is very important for your mains, particularly if it is a bill or a particular act. In the next article, we'll be looking into the recent Supreme Court review of the PMLA case. Recently, the 3A judge of the Supreme Court will be hearing the petitions, particularly with reference to a July 2022 judgment of the Supreme Court upholding the constitutional validity of the PMLA, or Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. It's a very important act for your particular syllabus of prelims for Indian polity and for our GS2 for the various government policies and interventions for government and development in the particular country. Now here, when we talk about the PMLA Act, firstly, the background of the act was to enact strict anti-money laundering practices, anti-money laundering act to curb black money and say the underground economy, particularly to combat the drug cartels and the drug trade. So this act tried to abolish that, right? It had the objectives of preventing money laundering, confiscation of properties derived from money laundering, and also levying a fine along with imprisonment of minimum of 3 years, which can be extended to 7 years, and also appointing an adjudicating authority and also an appellate tribunal which will be trying out the cases on a special basis with reference to money laundering aspect. Now ED, the Enforcement Directorate, has been given the teeth under the PMLA case to actually investigate the various offences. ED is under the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. Alongside the same, there is also Financial Intelligence Unit India under Department Department of Revenue, which have also been given the teeth to actually look into the various financial intelligence gathering aspects on the money laundering cases in India, or the potential money laundering cases in India. Also, with reference to various scheduled offenses and the various offenses under, say, drug peddling, money laundering, black money, so they can be also independently be verified and registered, investigated by the police, local police, CBI, Customs Department, SEBI, or any other investigative agency, right? And we have to understand the role of ED when we have to discuss the role of ED under various acts. Firstly, under the PMLA, it is actually to investigate and trace and to provisionally attach the properties derived from money laundering, right? And so ensure the good flow of the prosecution. Then, according to FEM, the Foreign Exchange Management Act, it can also conduct various investigations into suspicious form of, say, foreign exchange. Then the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018, ED has the power to look into the investigative aspects of the fugitive economic offenders, right? The Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, which has been repealed, ED had the power under the same. And also the Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act, right? ED also has the power under this particular aspect. Now, when we actually look into the journey of PMLA in the Supreme Court, the very first important judgment that Supreme Court gave was the Nikesh Tarachand Shah versus the Union of India 2017 case, where Supreme Court actually struck down the section 45 of the PMLA Act, which actually talked about the bail provisions under the PMLA, right? Where the bail to any accused individual can only be given if a particular judge is satisfied of two things. Firstly, if the accused is innocent. Second, if there is no risk from the accused of further money laundering cases. But these particular aspects have been misused, according to the Supreme Court, according to the various petitioners in the case, to actually launch investigations into the opposition members and the various amounts of, say, political leaders in the particular nation. And ED has been, according to them, transformed into a wing of the say particular government of the day or ruling part of the day to prosecute and harass the various for various political gains and political benefits, right? So that is why the Supreme Court struck down this provision, where the Supreme Court told that it is extensive authority to arrest, search, seize property without any stringent safeguards, without any rules and regulations whatsoever, is is actually unconstitutional, and say it is actually running and counterintuitive to the fundamental rights of the people. And also under PMLA, accused is actually considered as guilty until proven innocent. But under our fundamental rights, can you tell me which right, where we have the provision that we all are innocent until proven guilty of a particular offense? This is where this is also running against our constitution. And finally, the ED's enforcement case information report, right, is also not given to the various accused and their lawyers. So this is where they are also living on, missing out on a lot of, say, amount of information. But Supreme Court in 2022 in Vijay Madan Lal case, it tried to actually overturn its judgment later, right? Under this particular aspect, under this particular judgment, the offense of money laundering is a heinous crime and can be also amounted to terrorism, the Supreme Court noted. Section 3, Section 24, Section 5, right, they were all given sanctity by the Supreme Court also that it is actually being granted that it is perfectly constitutional, there is nothing wrong with the particular aspects of PMLA, right? And Supreme Court also noted that stringency in granting bail under the Act is legal and not arbitrary, because the money laundering aspect, or say the offenses related to money laundering, is in itself a very serious offense. So for serious offenses, we need serious laws and stringent laws. So this is where Supreme Court told that because it is a serious case, we have to grant the particular sanctity to this law. And also it is not mandatory for the ED to give enforcement case information report to the accused or their lawyers, because it is a confidential document according to ED. The Supreme Court also agreed in this case, right? The statements are that to be made to the ED are considered as admissible in a court of law, and also the provision of attachment of property are also in the best interests of the accused and the state, right? So these are the various amounts of cases and the various discussions taken by the Supreme Court. And here This particular case was later referred to a 3-judge bench, and also a separate case is also going on with reference to the Delhi Chief Minister. So this is where we have to also note some of the other concerns. Firstly, the proceeds of crime, or say the money which are derived from money laundering, and which has been defined in this particular case or in this particular act, is very broad. So it can be easily be tenable and say be manipulated using legal loopholes. Also, the number of offences is actually very high. So these are also one of the concerns. The burden of proof, as we have told, is actually on the accused, actually to prove that that person is not guilty. And also, arrest without written communication of grounds of arrest is directly running against Article 22, which is a fundamental right of the people, right? So this is where the suggestions that, firstly, that there must be a periodic review of this particular act. According to various commissions, the PMLA Act must be undergoing various periodic review, right? The transparency and accountability of the ED must be clarified under this particular act with reference to investigations, with reference to various reports, with reference to various statements, right? And there should be various restrictions on which the overreach of the ED must be curbed by a particular legislation of the government, where the bail conditions must be must be made less stringent, and also more leeway must be given to the people who are falsely accused of the various offences of this particular act. And finally, there will be more awareness and consultation with the people, right, to actually know the detailed amount of provisions. Now in this one, we have the latest Supreme Court observation from the month of July with reference to the ongoing case involving the Delhi government's chief minister, where there have been two aspects where the Supreme Court focused that individual liberty is actually having more interest, right, but with reference to the various infringement of the fundamental rights of the citizens. Firstly, the Supreme Court told that the necessity for arrest under PMLA, according to section 19, is that the officers, it is told in the act that the officers, if they are having the reason to believe that a person can do a crime or actually are accused in a particular crime, they can arrest, right? But Supreme Court told that this, whether proving the necessity of arrest is required under section 19 or not, whether the ED must be proving the necessity or the reasons to arrest or not. And Supreme Court told that yes, they have to, because the official's decision is subject to judicial review, where the Supreme Court judges told that the exercise of power and satisfaction of the conditions must and should be put into judicial scrutiny and examination, where if the arrestee or the person who has been arrested specifically challenges their own arrest, this must be subjected to judicial review. Then, according to this particular act, it has been seen that the courts also have been staying the bail petitions, the bail orders, right, that the judges are not very welcome into giving the bills, because these two conditions of giving the bills is actually very stringent, and it has been made contingent on the conscience of the judges. So this is where also the prosecution from the government side, they also aggressively go against the bail orders. So Supreme Court told that stays must not be issued on a day-to-day basis. It must be a rarest and exceptional case when the bail must not be given. Generally, bail should be the norm. Jail should not be the norm, right? So this is where I again present you one practice question for you all, that PML is a law designed to combat financial crimes. However, its implementation is a subject of intense legal scrutiny, argue using Supreme Court judgments. In the increasing, in the preceding PYQs, it has been seen that the UPSC has asked many questions and also asking you the Supreme Court judgments. I gave you two here. You try to answer, and also let me know what you think of the various provisions here, particularly after the judgment that Supreme Court is going to deliver today on PMLA. In the next article, we'll be looking into the recent antitrust allegations on big tech companies, particularly Google, where an Indian startup lobby group has filed a complaint with the CCI, the Competition Commission of India, against Google's alleged anti-competitive practice in the online advertising market. Very, very important aspect for Indian polity and governance, and also for GS2, for various government policies and interventions and the issues arising out of the design. Now here, let us discuss the various allegations first. Firstly, Google has been alleged of using its dominance over the various markets, particularly over the advertising scenario, where Google is earning 97% of its income from advertising. And we know that Google is a a part and parcel of our life right now. Whatever we need, we just Google and search. And also we have seen various amounts of advertisements coming on various Google websites and so on. Now you would let me know in the comments what you think of these advertisements, and also how they affect your privacy, right? How you affect your privacy. If you have known that even if you search something on Amazon, after a particular amount of time, say 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you see similar ads across all your websites, across news websites, across YouTube and so on. So let me know what you think of it, right? So Google has been alleged of using its dominant position to curb out the various advertising agencies. Also, Google has this ad ranking system where there is a bid-based system of the various amount of people who want to advertise their products on Google. They have to actually submit some bids, submit some prices per clicks, with reference to their ads that will be displayed on Google website or various Google platforms, right? Also, it has been alleged that Google is artificially increasing the prices of advertising prices, correct? Also, with reference to various other allegations, there are self-preferencing allegations where Google is actually promoting their own services, right, with reference to their own brand of advertisement. If you have seen, if you are using an Edge browser, you will be seeing a Google Chrome, say particular link, right? So this is where Google is actually trying to promote their own services, right? And also the Privacy Sandbox initiative, Google is trying to move out or phase out third-party cookies, or the various amount of web services which actually store user preferences, user browsing data, to actually be sold to other private sources, private enterprises, to actually cater advertising policies. Now Google, what is doing, it is trying to restrict the third-party cookies, and this will be impacting the non-Google demand-side platforms. If you can also see, recently the CCI has also sought Apple's reply on App Store issues, where it has been seen Apple is also using its dominant market position on App Store by not, say, allowing high amount of degree of freedom for the app developers there. Also recently, Google has an illegal monopoly according to an US judge, where it has, or say Google has paid around $26 billion in 2021 to maintain search engine dominance. Also, if you see, according to EU's European Commission, which is actually very much against big tech dominance, it has launched into various investigations against Apple, Amazon, with reference to their products, with reference to Facebook, Google, Meta, and various amounts of, say, big tech and their policies. So this is where we have to understand India has also its own India's draft digital competition law, where according to changing times, India is actually trying to bring in some rules and regulations for the big tech companies. Firstly, it is trying to bring in self-preferencing provisions to actually have some self-regulatory authority, self-regulatory aspects on the big tech companies itself, right? Where using various technologies such as AI, machine learning, self-prohibition on the various aspects of market dominance can be applied. Then this particular law is also trying to curb anti-competitive practices before they even occur. So there must be strict guidelines also with reference to that. Now this is not yet out in the domain, but this particular act is in the panel recommendation phase. Also, the associate digital enterprises, for example, for Google, we have Google Maps, we have YouTube, and so on. So the associate enterprises, they must be also have similar obligations, similar rules and regulations for the systematic significant digital enterprises such as Google. So their associate are equally as large as Google according to this particular draft law, right? And also there are actually data sharing implications. There would be comprehensive data sharing prohibitions and guidelines on the same. And also there will be heavy penalties if they do not agree to the same. And also, according to various private companies in India, some are in favor, some are against. Particularly companies like Paytm, they say that if large companies are on board this particular law, then we are also agreeing. Make My Trip has actually told that these particular regulations must be only be imposed on the big tech companies or companies which are having huge scale and huge dominance. The trade unions, they are also arguing that these rules must be brought in as soon as possible. Now some other companies, for example Zomato, who are not with these rules because they think that they will be stifling the innovation in their company. Swiggy is telling that this will be stifling the growth of Swiggy or other related companies in the rest of the country. Also Amazon and Flipkart, obviously they will argue that these particular provisions are still not tested in European Union. What are the cons, what are the pros, what are the fees and fines, penalties out of the same, right? So they are not out in the same date that they are actually alleging. But obviously it is a need of the time. It is a need of the hour that India must be also, according to European Union, according to UK, according to US, according to Germany, where all of the countries have their own sets of provisions with reference to big tech companies, right? So this is where this practice question, where India's proposed Digital Competition Bill 2024 could herald a new era of stringent digital regulation, critically examine. You let me know definitely in the comments whether you think that particular yes, this law must be bought, or no, this law must not be bought, and your respective arguments in the comments. In the next one, we'll be looking in briefly into Indian aviation sector, because recently the IATA, the Global Airlines grouping, it has raised concern over the various show cause notice issued by the Indian authorities to the various foreign airlines in the country. Now this is a very important aspect for UPSC prelims, economy and social development and infrastructure, particularly for airports. Aviation sector is very important for India. As we can see, India is third with reference to the various aviation industries all around the world. And also if you can see here, day by day over a period of time, right, we can see that in 2020, according to 2024 levels, right, starting from 2020 when the COVID pandemic started, there is an consistent rise in both international passenger traffic and also domestic passenger traffic in India, particularly due to low fares, right, high amount of airlines and increasing investments by the government of India. And also we can see the government has a target of having 220 airports by 2025. Please do not forget to use this in your mains answers whenever you're writing anything related to Indian aviation sector or say infrastructure in general. Also, 470 new aircrafts have been ordered from Airbus and Boeing. 15 number of scheduled air operators are in India, and also around say 9.43 lakhs of scheduled flights in 2022 were witnessed from 2021, which was seen as a almost 30% jump. Also, when you try to introduce your answer with reference to aviation sector, do not forget to use this particular line, where Indian aviation sector is witnessed to see a meteoric rise in recent years, transforming from a nascent industry to a significant contributor to the economy, right? And it has emerged, as we have taught, third largest, where the government has focused more on rapid growth of airports, airlines, infrastructural development, government support with reference to the schemes we usually seeing, and also a competitive landscape by promoting more and more airlines such as IndiGo, and also privatization of the Air India, right? So in the comments you would let me know in which year government privatized Air India and which private company is operating Air India right now. Now when we talk about the key regulatory facts of the Indian aviation sector, we have to understand firstly the role of DGCA, the Director General of Civil Aviation, and the Airports Authority of India. DGCA is both of the same are under Ministry of Civil Aviation, and DGCA is actually regulatory body for civil aviation in India, where the various safety regulations, airworthiness standards, licensing of airlines and international cooperation is taken by. Now, with reference to Airports Authority of India, it manages and develops airports in India for the airport development operations, air traffic management, aeronautical communications, and so on. Now, with reference to this, also, we have to understand the various other aspects of regulation in India with reference to Airports Economic Regulatory Authority of India, with reference to various fees, fines at airports. With reference to Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, we have the security of various airports in the country. The major legislations are Aircrafts Act 1934, Airports Economic Regulatory Authority of India Act of 2008, and the Civil Aviation various requirements, guidelines, and so on. The main areas of regulation are air safety, airworthiness, air transport services, aircraft operations, aviation security and environment protection. So we have to understand the aviation sector has a comprehensive aspect of various rules and regulations and the same, which can be actually be codified under a single India Air Aviation Act. So this is the various recommendations under the same. Also, we are seeing this recent issue, which is the thing of the news right now, that 10 foreign airlines have been issued notices via the Directorate General of GST Intelligence, the DGGI, where these foreign airlines have been issued notices running into thousands of crores. Now this, according to IATA, global airline grouping, this will be hurting the ease of doing business in the country, where issuing tax notices is actually seen as a derogatory or say less progressive aspect of doing business. So here, that is why the government of India must be working on the same, and also is having various government initiatives. Firstly, to boost regional connectivity, we have the UDAN scheme, and also the various Make in India initiatives for aircraft manufacturing in India. We also have the Airport Authority of India, who is retrofitting existing terminals, also 15 new terminals at a cost of $2.32 billion US. We also have DG Yatra for more passenger connectivity and better user friendly passenger centric airports in the country. We also have the Navi Mumbai Airport, Guwahati airports, who will be operating as inter-regional hub to boost logistics sector in the country. Also increased allocations to aviation sector, as we can see here, right? Particularly under the regional connectivity scheme of UDAN scheme, they have been improved. There have been more amount of investments in greenfield airports in the country, or new airports, particularly under the PPP, public-private participation in Andhra Pradesh. GST rate on the maintenance repair services has been reduced to 5% from 18%. And finally, steps to promote sustainable aviation, particularly by sustainable aviation fuel, right, is being promoted in this particular sector. And here I have a PYQ from 2017, right, where the question is that examine the role of airports in India through joint ventures under PPP mode. What are the challenges faced by the authorities? So to start this, you can actually start with some of the targets or projections by India, right, for their airports. So please do use such, and also use some statements, very important statements by the various aviation ministers. Watch out for this in your newspapers also. Finally, we'll be going through the Prelims Snippets, 4 more important articles, where we'll be first starting to understand what is indexation. Now, indexation is actually a method to adjust the purchase price of an asset to account for inflation. Now, imagine you purchased a flat for 10 lakh rupees in 2000, right, 2000 year, and the same flat you are selling for 1 crore in 2024. So you will be understanding in the same period of time inflation was also there. So it was also having some impact. So indexation is actually trying to assess what is the impact of inflation on your selling price of 1 crore. Right? So this is where the budget 2024-25 proposal was proposed actually to remove the indexation benefit on the long-term capital gain tax in the country with reference to some unlisted assets. This can be property, this can be some stocks of some unlisted companies which have not been listed at the stock exchanges. So right now, there have been many protests against this particular aspect. So right now what the government did, government totally took a U-turn. They gave the people right now, is giving the people 2 options. Firstly, first option is you can give 20% long-term capital gain tax, which indexation benefits, or you can give 12.5% tax without indexation benefits. Now, this is actually also having grandfathering option, that is properties purchased before July 23, 2024 will not be having this particular aspect of any indexation tax. Any property sold after this, they have to be paying either this option 1 or option 2. Next, this is entirely up to the taxpayer choice, where they will be going with the option 1 or option 2. Now, another aspect is how this inflation is actually calculated. This is actually via this cost inflation index. Cost inflation index is actually denoted by the government of India every year, and the base year of the same is determined by the IT income tax department, which is right now at 2001, right? The total say total inflation adjusted cost is, the formula of the same is cost of acquisition of the property, right, multiplied by cost of say the CII or cost of inflation in that particular year, divided by the year of purchase. In the next one, we'll be looking into yen carry trade, which is actually responsible for the recent stock market crash. Firstly, what is, in particular nations such as Japan, the interest rate is as low as 0% or even minus, right? So what the people in Japan do, they borrow in Japanese yen at zero cost almost, and they invest the same money in rest of the other nations such as Mexico, US, and so on, other countries' bonds, where they will be getting high returns. So they are getting these returns almost free of cost because they are borrowing at nil amount of cost. So this is what is known as carry trade, right? Where it is actually done in countries like Japan, where we have the currency yen, which is having ultra low interest rate. The nation, the Bank of Japan, has ultra low interest rates, and where there is actually a trend of massive influx of yen denominated funds because of low interest rates in the global markets. And why it is right now the carry trade is decreasing? Firstly, because we have to understand, right, with reference to the Bank of Japan right now is trying to increase their interest rates, and obviously if the interest rates in Japan increase, the carry trade will be going down, and this is why the attractiveness of carry trade is going down, and that is why people are withdrawing their money from the Mexican bonds, from the US bonds, from which they have actually borrowed from yen, and that is why this is leading to mass selling pressure of stocks and bonds in the market, which has led to the decline in global stock markets recently. In the next one, we'll be looking at the provisions of Juvenile Justice Act, the definition of child who is less than 18 years. Categorization of children is particularly children who are having issues with the law or persecuted with some particular law or provisions or with reference to violations of law, and also children in need of care and protection, particularly of orphanages and the various children who need some protection of the state. There are juvenile justice boards, which are quasi-judicial bodies deciding on matters related to children in conflict with the law. And also there are child welfare committees which deal with children in need of care and protection. The age of responsibility has also been recently been amended, and to be brought in the range of 16 to 18 years with reference to heinous crimes committed by particular children belonging to this age category. And adoption criteria is also under this particular act with reference to Central Adoption Resource Authority. In 2021, this act was passed by the Parliament, which is trying to strengthen the particular aspect of child protection setup in the country, where the district magistrate have been empowered to authorize adoption authors to independently evaluate the functioning of district child protection units. Right, the eligibility parameters for CWC members have been ratified, right, to have high amount of quality service of appointment. Now, finally, we'll be discussing about the Venezuela crisis, because the country is seeing high amounts of inflation, low amount of GDP, and high amounts of corruption, scams, scandals in the nations. This is why this country is in the news right now. Particularly when we talk about Venezuela, we have to look into the neighboring countries of Colombia, Brazil, and Guyana, and it is surrounded by the Caribbean Sea and the Caribbean island nations on the particular north. For geographical information, it is very, very important that you look at this particular aspect. We also have the Amazon forests as a portion of the particular Venezuela country too. And also, as you can see, this is a country which is dependent on petroleum exports as well. Also, you can see it is almost say more than 75% or 80% of the country's exports are dependent on petroleum, and they are dependent almost at around 20-25% on exports themselves. So this is where we have to also see that the country is majorly an export dependent nation on petroleum, and this is in the news due to this amount of protests and a high amount of instability in the particular nation. Now in 2024 only, I want all of your answers in the comment section. This question was asked regarding Venezuela, and this is where I want all of your answers in the comment section below. So thank you all for being a very patient audience today. I hope you will be following up the quiz which is following up. All the best and best of luck to all of you. We'll be meeting again soon. Till then, thank you.